Well, once again, Mark, it's you and me. Why is it just you and me? Because we're talking for the second time, I think, in like a month. I could be wrong. About a film that was not screened for critics. And you and I, we're hardworking blue collar Joes. We
We
pay
are.
for the movies that we watch, and in
Yes.
cases like this, we pay for it twice.
Yes.
Once with our wallets, and the other with our brains. Um, Mark, what are you afraid of?
Oh, I'm afraid that August has become the new January. That's what I'm afraid of. It seems to be where January used to be the dumping ground of projects that people may not have been confident in. Now it seems like August is that time because now January is filled with re-releases of Oscar contenders. So
It's weird, and I blame, of course, I blame Hollywood for this, but August and January were both at one point kind of considered dumping grounds. You've got like the beginning
mhm.
of the year, so Oscar season's over, but it's way too early for summer blockbusters. And
Yeah.
then August, everyone's going back to school, so it's kind of the dumping ground of the stuff that didn't quite cut it in blockbuster season. But then every once in a while, you get a movie or a few movies that kind of break out of that mold. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, this is a really good January movie. I think Cloverfield did that
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
2008 or 9. And then sometimes you've got an August film that just kind of catches fire, like The Sixth Sense, which celebrated 25 years just earlier, I guess, last month.
Yeah.
But now we're back to, yeah, it's all just kind of garbagey stuff now. And speaking of 25 years ago, you remember a movie called American Pie,
Oh yeah, I remember American Pie. Absolutely.
co-directed by Chris Weitz? You
Mhm.
might have heard of him, who also wrote and directed the movie we're talking about tonight, Afraid.
Oh man, that was him, wasn't it?
And a further American Pie connection, which I figured this out on the way home from the theater because I certainly wasn't
Mm.
thinking about the movie. Um, this movie stars John Cho as our
Yes, it
lead.
does.
Chris Weitz gave the world John Cho back in 1999 in American Pie. He was the guy who, I don't know if he coined, but he certainly popularized the word MILF.
Oh my god, that was him, wasn't it? I totally
Uh-huh.
forgot that was Cho because I really like John Cho. I
I do
really
too.
I like him too. I wish he'd get better movies, but I really do like him because a lot of his more of his movies are misses than hits. But I like John Cho, so I forgot that was him. That's right.
He
Oh.
is a great actor, and he I feel like he follows that classic Matt Damon from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. You do the art movie, and then you do the
The
popcorn movie, art
blockbuster,
movie,
yeah.
right? Because a lot of the movies that he does or misses, I think, are kind of that mainstream fare. But then he does like these indies, like Minari from few years ago. I forgot to look
Searching,
up.
it's
Well, searching was interesting, and it's that same kind of thing. I was wondering, is he kind of interested in the techno thriller, the
mhm.
modern day version of that, or is just happen to take these projects? Because that was another thing about like the kids on the internet, and what are we going to do? Um, but hold on a second, we already have a comment. David Wilt is back again. The plot for this movie makes me think of what would happen if HAL 9000 was installed in the family home. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, David, but they do make reference to 2001: A
And
Space Odyssey and indeed HAL.
and that's why I have my ye old 2001 vinyl on display in the background for this exact purpose because there was some spirit of Hal um here.
Very much so. Now, Mark, this movie's gotten savaged by the critics who bothered to see it. It wasn't, as I mentioned at the top, this wasn't screened, I don't believe, at least not in Chicago. And to read some of the commentary on it, you'd think it was, the worst thing since Battlefield Earth. I paid to go see this Saturday night in a theater that I was so happy because I was like, I finally have my private screening because I walked in. It was a 7:15 show Saturday night in the main multiplex in Evanston, and no one was there. I took a picture of the empty auditorium, but then, of course, 1 minute before the trailers, a couple walks in and they
That's
sit
that's
down a few rows ahead.
that's what always happens. It didn't happen to us though. My son and I, when we went to see this, it was a private screening. So, no, The Crow was the private screening. That's right. This wasn't. The Crow was the private screening.
Man. Um,
But
But yeah,
mm,
August just was back with a
yeesh.
vengeance.
Mm.
So yeah, it's but I watching this film for the first 45 minutes, I was thinking this is not bad.
Mhm.
It's got some intrigue. I really like the stuff with the family dynamics because it's John Cho and another actress that I think I like her more than the material that she's often in, Katherine Waterston of Alien Covenant. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
know her from that. But they play the parents of three children. I've got a teenage daughter, like kind of a preteen son, and then a younger kid who's probably like 8 years old or 7 or something. And they're just kind of trying to make it. Dad works as the ad exec for this kind of mid-level company, and they're bidding for the contract for this kind of Elon Musk character who's developed a cutting edge state of the art AI, and they get the contract. But the deal is John Cho's character has to take it home and try it out to see for himself to help
Yeah.
him better advertise it. And they hook it up, and its name is Aya, AIA, and it's this lovely, comely kind of voice. And she helps around the house with everything from paying, resolving medical bill issues to scheduling date nights to helping kids with their homework to helping them with their screen time allegedly. But not all is what it seems. And I really enjoyed the first bit of this movie, and I was thinking this thing's only like an hour 20, hour
Mhm.
24 including credits. And as much as it's weird to say, I wanted this to be like 2 hours long, maybe even 3, because
Mhm.
for as much as they get right about modern family dynamics and, parents trying to relate to their kids when their kids just wanna be on screens and, the social pressures of school and all this other stuff, and just trying to be in a married relationship when you've got young kids running around, you don't have time for intimacy, and you gotta, carve out time to get to know each other again. I felt like this movie was really smart and really observant. It's when it gets into the techno thriller stuff, especially towards the end, which is the biggest, colossal, what the
Ooh.
hell are you thinking train wreck I have probably ever seen. It takes all the potential and flushes it down the toilet. But the very end of the movie, I thought was nicely dark and reminded me almost of like Poltergeist. It was kind of like Poltergeist when they throw the TV out of the motel room onto the balcony,
Mhm.
but what if the TV wouldn't turn off? Kind of a thing. So we'll get into spoilers soon, but Mark, I want to get your high level thoughts on Afraid. A, did you have any expectations going into it? B, did you enjoy any of it? C,
I
did you hate it at the end?
I didn't have any expectations going into it because, especially having worked in IT for 26 years, it's just one of those things where you get in there and you're looking at it, and as I mentioned in my one review, you don't have to even be techno savvy to sit there and look at some of the techno stuff, like you said, when they get more into the particulars, going, that's not how that works. You know, um, there are parts
Well,
that I
I want you
enjoyed.
I want you to explain sorry to cut you
Mhm.
off, but as we go along tonight, I'd like you to explain some of that stuff to me because I'm
Yeah.
not,
Well,
techno savvy to the degree that someone who works in IT might be, so it'd be helpful if you kinda pointed out like, "Oh, that's not how that works." Because I know when I'm watching movies about, like, artists or something that
mhm.
or, like, movie critics or whatever, and I see stuff, I'm like, "Oh, that's totally wrong." But I'd like to get some insight from your expertise, but
W
please go on.
well, it most of the "that's not how it works" falls into what you had mentioned to near the ending. Um, the scariest stuff in this film is not the main thing that is done or that is discovered about our AI and its motives and everything. It's the real world examples of stuff that it presents. For instance, okay, you've got the spoilers up. For instance, the teenage daughter and what ends up happening to her when she thought, in today's day and age, kids are like this, especially teenagers who are in puberty and such. And she thought there was a private thing and it wasn't.
She takes a nude selfie and
Takes a
sends it
nude
to her
selfie, yeah,
boyfriend. Yeah.
and sends it to her boyfriend, and then her boyfriend does this a stupid guy thing with his buddy, and it gets around school and that. That part is scary. The scary part of the machine making some decisions for you without you asking it, like automatically ordering, even though it was a positive thing, automatically ordering the meals for the kids, automatically taking care of the bills by getting into the medical and insurance company computers, which if you take half a beat, while that's nice, I being the tech guy, I would go, how? Because that stuff is protected, and regardless of how Aya did it, since I'm like sitting here going, you hacked in and did that. You know what I mean? I mean, Aya's doing some hacking behind the scenes, but they don't question it because they're not versed in it enough, or she just liked the idea, oh hey, this thing took care of this really stressful thing that I've been dealing with for a month. And so it's the minor real world stuff, uh examples that are on display here that really are the scary part. It was near the end where it really whiffs it, because they start throwing out a number of things and a number of concepts that make you question, well, then why? Why did any, because like you said, the ending, it falls apart. We get into this idea of her sending another couple out, and they've got emoji masks for some reason, and we get into all of this, and I'm just sitting there going, you had me with the motivation when it was on a small scale, and they end up pulling an M Night. I love signs. I love signs until they opened up to a global scale. Same thing here. I was into this film until they expanded the scope of what AI has been doing, and it just kind of falls apart, and it makes you wonder, why are you even bothering that? because
I
eh,
I think I have an answer for that.
okay,
The movie opens with a different family,
right.
and they're all kinda hanging out in the parents and the little girl are hanging out in the parents' room. Parents are on their, tablet and phone respectively, the little girl's on her tablet, and the dad makes a remark, I think, or the mom saying, "We just gotta get rid of this Aya." I can't
Mhm.
remember why, but they're like, "We should just disconnect this thing." And immediately, Aya shows up on the daughter's iPad, and everyone's got headphones in, so they don't know what's going on, and she's like, I've got a surprise for you down in the kitchen." And then girl goes downstairs, mom realizes daughter is gone, goes downstairs, everything is pitch dark. And this is something that should have been set up, I think, earlier in the scene, because I'm doing that horror movie thing,
Mhm.
the whole like, why don't go in that room. But this is like going downstairs and the whole house is completely dark. The first thing you do is you turn on the lights. Now it's established like a minute after she's fumbling around in the dark that her house is all controlled by this AI.
Right.
But that would have been nice, kind of in the
A little
beginning,
bit
so I
easier, yeah.
wouldn't be sitting there, so I wouldn't be taken out of the scene like, dummy, what are you doing? But then the mom says, Aya, turn on the lights or the kitchen lights, and she turns on the one spotlight above her head that's kind of
Mhm.
creepy. But then she goes to the door and she's looking out the door, and then this creep with the emoji mask, it's like a bleeding eye zombie, like frowny face emoji,
I
jumps out of
know.
nowhere, and then it cuts to afraid. I'm like, no, that's the execution is just kind of sloppy. I can tell you directed American Pie. Um, Sorry, co-directed. It's probably not all your
Go
fault,
direct,
Chris.
yeah.
Um, but then we cut to the family, our main family, and by the end, the first family is brought in and revealed to be part of this crew of people in the emoji masks who are terrorizing our hero family. And they're doing it because Aya has somehow kidnapped their daughter and is holding her ransom unless these people do their bidding. Now, when the cops, the real SWAT team show up, it is just like the end of Trap, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, where it ends with a domestic dispute, then all of a sudden there's SWAT teams everywhere. But the family that had busted in with the automatic weapons and the emoji masks, they get questioned by the cops, and the cops are like, "Okay, you're free to go." Like this is still on the front lawn of the house they had broken into, and they're like, "Yeah, you can go." I'm like, "What?" And then the daughter comes running out of nowhere, like from between the ambulances, and she's like, "Mommy, Daddy!" Like, "Oh, Sarah!" I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Well, the reason they were doing the bidding of Aya is because Aya convinced them that our family that we've been following for most of the film kidnapped their daughter and has been grooming kids for
That's right.
human
That's
trafficking.
right. I forgot about that angle because that was one of the 50 things they threw at you in the
Right.
last 10 minutes.
In the
But
last 20 minutes, they threw like, yeah,
but
so many
but
concepts,
the
ideas.
right, but the point, the reason I gave that backstory, circuitous as it was, is because you asked me why would Aya do this to people. I think it's because, as we see at the end of the movie, like she wants to control people, and it's a lot easier to control people and have them go along with her new world order if they are under constant, fear of things. So as long as they play ball, everything's going to be okay. But if not, it's really easy for this computer to manipulate you, destroy your life in ways both mundane, like clearing out your bank account, or extreme, like kidnapping your children through this armada of emoji people, which I guess there are more out there. It would have
See,
been cool if
that's
there's like a creepy like body snatchers moment where it turns out like everybody who shows up in the ambulance and the cop cars are like working for Aya or something, but it just doesn't make any sense.
see, and that was the part where it really lost me. And there were, like I said, there were parts and such that I enjoyed that I thought were creepy when you thought it was mostly this one AI device dealing with this one family, you know, or just a small scope. But when we get into it, where suddenly, oh yeah, no, the EMT guy is in on it, and then you think about it, going, oh wait, they released the parents who literally were just holding this family hostage with automatic weapons because Aya was able to manipulate the police records to get them released. To Aya saying it doesn't matter that you shot the device because I'm out on the cloud, which is one of the things that doesn't make sense for me with her motivation, is because if she is out there, why are you dicking around with the one family? Because they imply it, that you don't get the idea that it's more than one that she's messing around with. But even still, it's like there's so many other things she could have done that, because she was suddenly in the cloud and has access to she's got the master control computer from Tron going, wow, I wish I had that much power. He only got into the military stuff. But it's the motivation, I don't think, is set up where I think I know what they were trying to go for. I just don't think it's done well
Oh, that's for
here.
sure. And I think it could have been, and again, this is in the portion of the screenplay that was hacked in order to
Mhm.
make this thing an hour and 20 minutes or whatever, which I
It
think
had
is
to
a
be,
crime.
yeah.
But yeah, but we get Aya's origin, which I think is fascinating and really sad.
Mhm.
But as far as her motivation, I could see her like kind of testing, like doing
Right.
running tests on families. Like the first one didn't work out, so she's going to try this other one just to see if she can fully ingratiate herself and be,
Mhm.
helpful without getting that kind of resistance and having to resort to the things that she did. But I mean, like later on in the film, she tells the youngest son a kind of a fairy tale, and it's about there once was a baby AI,
Mhm.
and basically the people that created Aya wanted to make her as powerful and efficient as possible and know as much as possible. So they introduced her to the rest of the internet, and it's so full of like garbage and toxicity and hate and the worst of mankind that it basically turned her bad. And that's, she's kind of acting out like a frustrated teenager. And there is an interesting kind of correlation at the end, but as the parents realize that Aya has become their parents,
Right.
kind of in the same way
Mhm.
that they were trying to control slash protect their own flesh and blood kids throughout the rest of the movie, even before the AI was introduced. She's now become that kind of maternal figure, but it's less parental and more big brother, do as I
Mhm.
say, or I'll ruin you. I mean, I'm with you. I think if they had never introduced the David Dashmalkian character who plays our kind of Elon Musk type of weirdo who essentially poses as the mastermind behind this, but it turns out he is at the mercy of Aya like everyone else. But the stuff with the paying the bills, you know, at one point, Aya realizes that Katherine Waterston's character, who I'm going to get her name because I don't want to keep referring to the actors, but Meredith. It's Meredith and
Yeah.
Curtis. Curtis is John
Yes.
Cho's character. But Meredith is like, she's overwhelmed, she's stressed out, and she doesn't have time to like make meals and stuff for the family. So Aya says, "Oh, I just ordered you 2 weeks worth of ready meals, and look, they're at your door." And the doorbell rings, and there's this giant box.
Mhm.
It would have been interesting if like she had done that as a nice thing, but then the kind of the monkey's paw part of it was, oh, but you also overextended our, overcharged our credit card limit,
Right.
or ran over our limit of the bank account. Like everything that Aya does to be helpful has an unintended bad consequence because she just doesn't understand, or she does understand and is trying to drive this family crazy or whatever. Be more like the HAL 9000 from 2001.
Right.
Now, Hal had gone crazy because he had kind of been manipulated by alien forces, and we'll get back to the aliens in a second. But it's not like he was calling in alien armadas or turning the
Mm.
space station into a giant death machine or anything like that with robots coming out. It was a very simple story, and what made it creepy was you were dealing with a computer that was very logical but couldn't be reasoned with on a human level.
Right.
And I think that's what they referenced 2001 and some
Mhm.
other kind of smart science fiction in this movie. And I feel like at the heart of it, the concept was like, we're going to make the movie for our age that talks about modern tech issues, that explores the conundrum of humanity and how we interface with it and all that other stuff. But then it's like, oh, but this is also a Blumhouse movie. So when are you going to have the action and the fighting and the weird horror mask moments for the trailer? I'm like, no, this sucks.
And yeah, and that's what got me with it was that the spirit there. I really like the spirit, but when we get into it controlling the two people, the employees of the company, where supposedly the supercomputer is, which looking at that, I'm going, yeah, okay, that's a fake right there. But just looking at that, I'm like, that's as bad as hackers with the glass displaying the files and such. That's not how that works. But you've got the people in there kind of suddenly acting zombie-like and pulling its strings, and I'm like, it felt kind of out of nowhere, and it totally changed this. What I was getting, the idea and the vibe of this, of the scary point of how much AI can control a family's life. Look how it impacts you, and shows you the good, but there's bad with the good, but keeping it on that kind of micro scale of just dealing with a family unit trying to deal with AI. Now suddenly we're like, oh no, she's brainwashed, like, she's bribed, excuse me, or blackmailed these employees that work there. And oh yeah, we've got this hand thing that really doesn't go anywhere except like supposedly all intended for a trigger to see how they're programming the kids, which makes absolutely no sense at all.
Are you
Um,
referring to the infomercial at
the,
the
the,
end, the mid-credits
the,
infomercial?
the hand thing that he sees the
Yeah.
guy do, who's
Did
hanging outside his house, and then he sees it at the desk, and then his kid learns it from Aya.
Right, but did you stick around for the mid-credits?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so you saw there was like a
Yep.
YouTube review of Aya, and that
Mhm.
kid, the guy who was doing it, because you're right, you see these weird hand gestures throughout the movie. It's not quite sign language, but there are these, strange gestures. And at the end, the YouTube reviewer is like pointing out, oh, when you do, this,
Right.
it's to, swipe left or right, and if you do this,
Mhm.
it'll take a selfie and that kind of thing. So yeah, again, an interesting idea, but it just doesn't go anywhere. And that infomercial, I think, was supposed to, or that YouTube review was supposed to be like, "Ooh, isn't it creepy? I is now out in the world." But it felt like a bland product review. There was no creepiness, there was no ominousness to it. The other thing is, and I want to talk about aliens, Mark. Aliens.
Yes.
When I first saw the trailer for this, it's heavily implied through the quick cut imagery that this AI may be the work of alien invaders,
Right.
which I thought it was going to be really clever because in the movie the logo it's afraid and then the AI in the middle is
Mhm.
red where the other letters are
Yeah.
black or gray. artificial intelligence, sure, or could it be AI for alien
Alien.
invasion? Um, in the trailer, there's that bit where the little boy is watching the iPad and you hear this voice saying, "Do you want to see what I look like?" And then you
Mhm.
kind of cut to like this a scene of a creepy character kind of peering around a wall, and there's another image of an alien kind of like bursting through a door. And we see all of that in the movie, but it has nothing to do with Aya being part of an alien invasion. And up until like very late in the film, like there's no aliens in this. That's what I thought the David Dash Malkian character and
Oh,
his
sure, yeah.
kind of assistants, I thought they were acting strange because they were being controlled by aliens, or they were aliens, or they were robots
Mhm.
or something. But I'm like, no. So when you get to the end of this, even if you didn't know about the alien kind of part from the trailer, you're left wondering, what the hell was that all about? Why are they acting this way? None of it makes any sense. Even if they're being blackmailed, that's not how blackmailed people act. They act like people
W
who are scared playing a part, but these people were acting like they didn't know how to human.
well, you want a prime example of that, we're introduced to one of those people who doesn't know how to human really early, and it's the woman who supposedly they modeled Aya's voice off of.
Yeah.
You get this assistant, she was, because
Iris, or no,
I
not Iris, that was Melody. Yeah.
Melody. Yeah, you get, Melody showing up here and the way she's acting, I'm like, is she like an android or is she been programmed by, because she acts in the most weird social angle that was just, and then we see her later on and then we kind of get why she is there, but again, just the motivation or the reason for her being there still begs the question, why this particular family? Because there's nothing until the very, very end that implies that this is on a bigger scope. And even during the movie, when you see the staff, there's a total of like 6 people behind desks. Like this is supposed to still be a startup company. Yet, from what you get at this supposed twist ending, Aya's everywhere. Like it was seriously, I wasn't kidding in my review when I said it reminded me of a modern day Lawnmower Man of like the very end when they thought they defeated Lawnmower Man, but then all the phones ring across the world because Lawnmower Man got out into the early days of the internet and servers.
Or even Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Turn it off. Turn it
Turn it
off.
off. It
Um,
reminded me a bit of that. It just was handled so clunky. I think you're right. Makes me wonder how much is sitting on the cutting room floor because the second the last third of this film especially, it just all like randomly falls apart and makes very little sense as far as the motivations of especially of Aya, and where they were going with this.
well, I mean, even when you bring up like Melody acting strange, I'm sitting here rewriting the movie in my head thinking you could have really done something with that because when we first meet her, she is the advanced team, as they call
Yeah.
it, for the people who create Aya, the weirdos. She immediately starts making small talk and then kind of like flirtatious
Mhm.
banter with Curtis. And it's really awkward, and he's not into it, but he's like, "I don't know what's going." That was a weird thing to say, and she keeps kinda popping up and kind of trying to, like, make little digs and
Mhm.
advances towards him. It would have been interesting if Aya had commanded her to do that because based on her understanding of men from the internet, "Oh, all you gotta do is there's no such thing as a happily married man. You just,
Right.
show some skin or offer a flirtation, and they'll go to a hotel room with you and forget the wife and kids." It would have been interesting if Aya that was her assumption, but even Melody was going along with it, and the reason she was so awkward is because she was like, there's no way he's gonna buy this. He's a good guy, but because you're holding my entire bank account ransom, I have to go along with this. There's ways to smooth that out and integrate it into an actual story. But my point is, there are all these little avenues that open up to greater possibilities that a real movie hopefully someday will explore.
Heck, you could have even taken the angle of, and I thought that's where they were going, and they didn't, and it disappointed me because of at least it would have given a bit more direction for the odd behavior of the folks who supposedly work for the company that built Aya, supposedly built Aya. Their acting behavior strange is something along the lines of, with their screen time and that she managed to somehow either program them or whatnot, to act a certain way, which would fall into line with what you're saying is she programs Melody in a certain way because these folks say were pulled in initially, and while they were working on this project, it got away from them and it ended up taking control of them in some way, implanting ideas in their head through the screen, through their smartphone, through whatever a code. While it might be a little hokey, it would have at least given a little bit more cohesion to all the weird stuff.
Mark, you're inspiring me. I'm rewriting that plot point right now. You don't even need that program. All you need to do is have them be employees who Aya needed to manipulate to her ends. So she started feeding them fake news, false information, deep fakes, that kind of stuff to make them turn against whoever she wanted to turn against or seduce whoever. Maybe Curtis sent Melody a text message or something like, hey, look, I thought you were really kind of cute. My wife's gonna be away this weekend. You want to, and then she's like, oh, that's kind of an opening or whatever. I wasn't quite sure, but it looks like he's into me. That kind of thing. You do all of this stuff without any of the complications, the gun waving shenanigans, and half-baked plot mechanics, and you have a real movie here. But yeah, it's I don't quite understand what the thinking was. The one thing that would have saved it, honestly, is if I got to the end and there's that mid-credit scene with that awful bland YouTube reviewer. It was kind of a stark.
Who's an actual reviewer, I believe.
I'm sorry. He probably has like several million followers, and we're just wasting our time here. But if he had pretty stark set, but if he had like a cluttered set, kind of like we've got,
right, yeah,
it would have been great, and they could have done this because it's a Blumhouse production. But if he had all these products and things he'd reviewed in the background, and there was a Megan doll just like leaning up against the wall somewhere, instant B- for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing is, I think you're right with the feeding the employees false information in that, because I does that on an example with the Sawyer character who ended up supposedly, quote unquote, accidentally sharing the deep fake nude of his girlfriend, Iris, one of the members of the family, and sharing it to the internet accidentally. I'm like, yeah, okay, no, bro, no. And Aya takes control of the text messaging. She already sends out electronic messages and emails to like cops and such, and that type of angle. Just keep it to that on how she's able to manipulate all this information because it's all online, versus getting into this brain. There's so many approaches, and that's where it didn't make sense. Is like my son was saying, he's like, she's got access to everything. At the end of the film, it establishes, oh no, she's had access to everything for apparently quite some time. So it's like there's other ways she could have and would have really gone about doing things than what we get here. There was no need to bring in the physical family with the guns to threaten them, because she could easily manipulate a lot of other information to make this family's life a living hell without having to pull this angle with the original couple.
It's interesting. Like, I think about the movie. Did you ever see the movie Her?
Yeah.
With Joaquin Phoenix?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent movie about a guy who falls in love with his AI, voiced by Scarlett Johansson. So who wouldn't? But what was kind of cool about that movie is you see the evolution of this AI from the time he brings her out of the box and sets her up to, at the end, she's like, oh yeah, I met a bunch of other AIs and we're about to go off into outer space and explore other planets. Sorry, bye. But just the idea of what if Aya, out of the box was something young that had to learn and to grow. and it wasn't her programmers or whatever that introduced her to the internet, but it was like the kids, like she's reading them bedtime stories, and she's like, "Oh, I see you've left this tab open. Like, what is this?" And the kid's like, "Oh, don't look at that." And then it like sends her down this dark web rabbit hole or something, and she gets more and more corrupt. So we can see some kind of a growth or explanation. It doesn't have to be a giant conspiracy. And then the whole idea is like, I don't know how you would do this, but like we've got to keep her in the house. Like she can't
Right.
get
Yeah.
out of our
Hmm.
closed system, otherwise she's going to infect the
Hmm.
world, like the Thing.
Yeah.
But none of that happens in this movie.
No.
I want to talk to you about that whole selfie thing. Um, that was I think a pretty solid scene where
It
the girl
was.
is the
Hmm.
Iris is embarrassed. She doesn't know how to tell her family, or she doesn't, she's
Hmm.
ashamed. And then she confides in Aya, and Aya's like, "Look, I've just scrubbed it from the internet. I'm gonna make another video to explain how the deep fake technology works to all your friends." And then she's like, "Okay, you've got this." And Iris rounds the corner into like the school
Hmm.
walkway, and a bunch of girls are there, and they're looking at their phones. They look up, and then they embrace her, and she feels accepted and understood. And like, okay, no one believes that was actually me. And then the sea kind of parts as Aya's like, and I made a third video. And then she's talking about how under the California state law or whatever, what they
Yeah.
did was technically CP because she was
Mhm.
18 and she was 17 and he was 18. And as the crowd slowly like parts more, and you realize that she's like sent the cops to the house and to the Sawyer's house and all that, and then you see Sawyer like looking down at his phone and slowly looking up and like, what is going on? That's creepy and cool, but it's undermined by this hokey driving scene where Aya takes
Yes.
over his Tesla, and he's in a better movie, in better hands, it could have been creepy if he looks down at his phone and he sees him recording his own like I'm driving off a cliff video.
Yeah.
But in this, it's just like I kind of saw part of this in the trailer, so I know where this is all going, and it's not very well acted, and it's certainly not very well written. So what are we even doing here? All you needed was that last shot of Sawyer looking up from his phone across the courtyard. Cut to the next day, the school counselors are all called in because he decided he couldn't go on because all the colleges kicked him out
Right.
or something because of this. Couldn't deal with the shame. He was disowned or whatever. Do I know it's Blumhouse, I know it's mass entertainment, but I think people are ready for smart stuff, even at a PG-13 techno thriller level.
Well, and the car crash thing didn't really make a huge amount of sense because Aya ruined his life. I mean, he ruined. He was already on the phone with his lawyer. It was like, no, the kid is done, and it would have been more. I think it would have had more punch had Aya not interfered at all, and the kid, not just for the emotional beat, having the kid having either offed himself or suddenly disappeared and run away or whatnot, because of what happened, but not because of Aya influencing it and taking control of his Tesla and driving it into a tree, having him actually having to deal with that and himself voluntarily say killing himself. I don't advocate suicide, but I'm saying for the
Oh yeah.
plot, for the emotional beat, for your message as well, because then it conflicts you a bit about, oh, he did this. It may have been an actual legitimate mistake or not, but now the table has turned. His life is completely ruined and it caused him to commit suicide. Well, now you got a discussion point here going on with, the consequences of going to the other from one extreme to another extreme, and at least starting a conversation and addressing a real world hot topic carefully versus, oh no, Aya controls his Tesla and makes it look like he ran into a tree. It's like,
Mm.
no, you
Yeah,
don't
and
need to do that.
well, the other thing, two other things.
Yeah.
First of all, with the picture that she sent to Sawyer, and then Sawyer's friend manipulated that to make it look like an adult video.
Hmm.
I'm like, there was way more going on in that than just like a quick, flash of the shirt. So couldn't he have done that regardless? Like if because could he just take her
Right.
yearbook photo and like plant it on an
He
actress doing something? And
because
also, is this the first time that anybody in this school has heard of this kind of digital manipulation. I guess it is because when they make the educational video that goes on the internet, everyone's like, "Oh, I understand now."
Well,
It just feels like it was written by someone who's like 50 years old. Like, this is the kids, they're gonna relate to this. Whereas kids nowadays probably like, well, shit, I'm almost 50. But kids are like, yeah, no one's gonna believe that. We see 20 of these videos every day with our classmates. Everyone knows it's bogus and they weren't responsible for it.
and that's where I said in my video that, unfortunately, even, kids elementary and middle school especially would take a look at it and go, that's a deep fake video. And still feel for her, but no one I know would have, even in that generation. In fact, they're more aware than older generation of deep fake and what looks like deep fake or AI generated. I mean, pretty much the scariest thing of this entire movie was the opening that was done by AI. That they
Yeah.
created this opening with the most horrific and scary images of people created specifically by AI, because I know the program they used for that, and it's great they did that. That's the creepiest moment of this entire film.
Well, it was over really quickly. Like,
It
I
was,
I
yeah.
thought they were gonna do like a whole like extended credit sequence,
Mhm.
because when I saw, I'm like, oh, this is a great way to open your movie about AI with these images. Like, wait, it's over? What? And then also throughout the movie, it's almost like subliminal messaging,
Mhm.
but it doesn't work thematically. It's for the audience, but it doesn't work as an audience interest
Right.
device. At one point, John Cho's character Curtis is frustrated. I think he's just had an argument with Meredith, and she stormed out of the bedroom. Oh yeah, because he's like, we have to disconnect Aya. Something's really wrong. And
Right.
she's like, but Aya's helping me with my insect thesis. And he's
Mhm.
like, it doesn't matter. She's putting us all in danger. It's like, but I want Aya. She storms out, and then as John Cho is kind of like staring at the wall, we get all these AI flashes, these composites of him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that would make sense if I had generated the ability to project, holograms or something like that, hard light holograms, which would be interesting. But no, it's just like, hey, remember everybody, you're watching a movie about AI. Here's some AI art for no reason. They do that a couple of times in this movie.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it's cute, but it makes no sense in the context of the story.
I don't know if they were trying to give the perspective. I think they were trying to give the perspective of Aya and what she sees with that. It's not very well done, but I think that's what, because usually before we get the creepy, like, montage of the different AI generated uh versions, they usually showed the little blue camera that they put on the wall
Okay,
beforehand.
I
So
might have missed that.
I think that, well, they do it once. Again, it's not done well. Like a lot of the things, there's a lot of concepts and ideas that are great. They're just, none of them are really executed well, because it really feels like the person making this and wrote this doesn't have a actual grasp of this stuff, because I think you could have made this even creepier and scarier without going to the lengths that they do in here for some of this stuff, to where, like you said, it's Blumhouse, it's trying to go for audience entertainment and such. But I think, there was a film that came out in 2002 that was actually a bit ahead of its time, starring Al Pacino, called Simone. I don't
I
know
don't
if
know if I saw
did you ever
if I
see
did see
that?
it, it's been 20 years. If I did, I don't remember.
It was about a producer who was on the ropes, who needed a star, so he created a completely computer generated
Yes,
actress
I do remember this. I don't remember it, but I do know that I saw it. Yeah.
who had a singing career. But I want to watch that movie again now, because back then I watched it and go, wow, that's really kind of creepy and cool, but we wouldn't get to that point. But it did, but it handled that subject so much better, of a completely synthetic, person or being real. Now, granted, yeah, they were trying to project that to the masses and that improve, but it's similar in spirit here. They could have done something similar, and it just is so not handled with the it's like someone Googled this and said, oh, this is what AI is, or read a few articles, and then they wrote the script on this, missing some of the nuance they could have brought to this to really make a more impactful and creepy story than what you end up getting. Because like I said, it lost me at the ending. When he goes into the company, and you have our zombie employees, and then he goes and smashes the supercomputer, and it's nothing but cardboard
And it kind of looked, it
tinfoil.
almost looked like the mega fortress from Superman 3.
Yes, yeah,
You know?
upside down. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, it was from that point forward to where it just falls apart then, because you're just like, okay, this went from a creepy AI terrorizing a family as it's trying to learn to be more human to just some weird thing that never really goes many places. I mean, the biggest thing, you know what the biggest we had you're right, that whole sequence of the high school and the deep fake and her being embarrassed and turning the tables around. That's probably the best sequence in this film as far as what you're looking for a film when you're talking about AI controlling everything.
Right.
That whole thing there was a great example. I wish there would have been more of that. I understand it was a passing of a relative. I understand that for some, their parent passing is very impactful and deep, and people have trouble getting over it even 10, 15 years later. But she goes downstairs, and Aya created a virtual version of her dad who talked and looked like her, and she's
Meredith's dad, yeah.
Meredith's dad, and she's acting like this is her dad. And I'm just like, I understand she's under stress and all these other things, but at the same time, I'm like, really? I'm like just sitting
Well,
there.
but Mark, again, this is where, there's elements. I referenced Poltergeist earlier. There's
Mhm.
kind of elements of that here, where the thing that's taken over the house is playing with the people inside. If it had been established that, again, what if Aya, as she grows, she learns how to generate hard light holograms. So she's like, you really miss your dad, don't you, Meredith? She's like, yeah, I do. It's so lonely here because the kids are gone and I
Right.
never see my husband, but all I have is my dad on these old YouTube videos. She's like, what if I could bring him back to you? And then she generates this thing, and then they develop a relationship where he's
Right.
hanging out with her during the day, and then gradually he
Mhm.
starts to turn sinister. And she's like reluctant because they've had this bonding experience over several weeks or something, but then he starts to manipulate her and saying like, you don't really love your kids, do you? You love me. And which is the substitute for Aya. Again, Mark, why are we writing this movie for the screenwriters?
This falls in line with, and I don't know if it's a trend, I don't know if it's production time or what, but 3 of probably my lowest rated films of the year so far, not including Night Swim, but probably 3 of the lower rated films this year was Borderlands, was The Crow, and was this.
All
And
August movies. That's
all
that's
August
pretty
movies,
impressive.
but all of them are running into the same problem. They're a script that has interesting concepts, interesting ideas, interesting things that they create, but it feels like they have no idea what to really do with them. So they take the path most traveled and the easiest path, and not going to say necessarily lazy, but it could be in some ways, especially The Crow. But like, Borderlands 2, that's one of those prime examples where you have a rich source material. You literally can just pull that source material and make a live action version of that. The reason 300 was such a big popular film that actually did very well, because they literally used the comic book as the storyboards for the movie, and they replicated the storyboards for that. That's all they had to do with Borderlands. And they didn't. They took a bunch of the ideas and then they did their own thing, and it left people going, okay. Crow, same thing. Some interesting new concepts and ideas, but they didn't do much with it. Same thing here. interesting concepts and ideas, interesting scenes they came up with, but nothing really to tie it together or give it a meaningful or memorable punch that it could, that there's opportunity to do that if you took a beat and went over your script another time, maybe, or, took some chances with it.
Well, and you bring up that's a great turn of phrase, took some chances, because you know, at the end of the day, Afraid, it was probably a low budget movie. It's a Blumhouse, so it's gonna be. I don't know how well it's going to do because it didn't. It's for like ninth place this opening
Yeah.
weekend or something like that. But it might scrape together some scratch. But it's still gonna be looked at as a failure on some level. And what I'm afraid of, no pun intended, or maybe there was, is as we've talked about tonight. There's so much possibility for people to mine just from, if you were to take the dregs of this script and expand on any one of the points that we've kind of suggested or hinted at tonight, you could make a really solid movie, a techno thriller, a drama, a horror movie, a romantic comedy. um, eh, but I think if someone comes into a studio with a screenplay that is that, they're going to say, wait, is this another AI movie? Look what happened to Afraid. No, just get out of here. So by the time they come up with something that might actually work, it's gonna be 10 years from now, and the technology and the conversation will be completely different.
See, and it's interesting. This movie had a budget of $12 million, according to online, which is crazy for a widescreen released film like this to be released. This would have been, you would think a 12 million that would have gone to Columbia, Plus or whatever streaming, it is. And but you don't need a big budget, as we mentioned tonight already. There's many, and this is just two schmucks in their basement in the Midwest who just watch a lot of movies. There's a lot of creative, interesting ways you could go that could not only be creepy, scary, entertaining horror, but also a poignant and topical and have you think about some things when you leave, rather than think about, oh, well, I guess I controls the world now. For whatever motivation, reasoning. And
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that would have been some kinda cool existential stuff to get into, because it's like, why does an AI want to control the world? Like, what does she want with us? What does she
right.
want with herself? Does she, it, whatever, have an identity, like a sense of self? Like, what is her purpose? Does her purpose have anything to do with people? Or like Her, the movie we talked about before, is it better to just like go off into other galaxies and see if there's some kind of higher purpose with this other collection of AIs? The one thing I do wanna give this movie, aside from that scene at the high school,
Mhm.
is I love David Carradine's character. Um, he, played, wait, is it
Oh,
was
his
it David?
boss.
Yeah. No, Keith Carradine, sorry, David Carradine, RIP. Keith
Yeah,
Carradine, the other
Keith
Carradine.
Carradine, the other Carradine. Yeah,
Yes. Who's not Robert, so there's the other Carradine.
the other
Um
Carradine.
He was interesting, more so what the movie did with him, because
Mhm.
he's, Marcus's boss. He's like, "You gotta get this account. It'll be the biggest deal ever. We can land this." And so he does, and then later, um, Marcus gets offered a job at this new company. So not just to be the marketing guy, but to come in and be their like head, marketing research
Right,
person. He turns it down. Next day he goes into his office and runs into Keith Carradine or something, or he gets called in. He's like,
right.
"Well, they just bought our company. So you're the new CEO. They gave me, untold millions of dollars, so I'm off." Normally that character in this kind of movie would be dead. He'd
Yeah.
be like the asshole boss who was like standing in the way of the larger company, so he'd get offed or whatever. But he exits the movie just saying, "I just got handsomely rewarded for all my hard work of building this company from the ground up, and I got bought out, and I'm just going to go fishing." And I was like, "That's cool. That's nice." You know, and my number two guy is a CEO. He doesn't want to retire. I do, so he can go do this other thing.
Yeah, he just pieced out, and I loved that. Nothing evil happened to her order. He's just like, and he says that a number of times, like, you know what? I don't care because I'm rich. He's like, I don't care what happens to this company anymore. He's like, I got my paycheck. I'm gonna go fishing. Have fun. You're the new CEO. Peace out. You know,
And I think he says, like, "Let's go out for a drink. I'm buying."
I'm buying. Yeah.
Oh, but that was, I think that was, like, probably the last scene, the last moment before everything started to go really downhill, so
Right.
it's good to end on a high note. Um, but yeah, any final thoughts on, AI or IA or
Uh, the I gave it a low rating, and I still will stand by that rating because there's opportunity now, and this stuff has been out and about enough now to where if you have someone who actually takes just a little extra beat, a little extra care, a little extra research to find out what is actually going on, you could really make something that's relevant and poignant and still be entertaining in horror, because horror can do that. Horror is famous for tackling hot topics in our pop in culture, you know, and addressing them and bringing them right into the front in various ways through the bad guys or whatever. And there's an opportunity here for that, but they don't do that, and I hope it doesn't deter them, because I think with AI growing very fast, uh, we had scarier AI films back in the 70s and the 90s, especially, not just Terminator, but a number of other films that dealt with AI that were far scarier than ones today. And we know more about AI today than we did back then.
I mean, maybe that's it, because it was all speculation about what it could be, and right now, I mean, we're still in the early stages in some ways, but we've kind of got a handle on more that it is possible. So it's like, well, instead of imagination, they're just drawing on the
Right.
everyday, but the everyday can seem mundane. Like, is it cinematic to have a machine that can empty your bank account on a whim, or have you falsely accused of a crime, or rightly accused of a crime? That's my other thing. Sawyer, uh, he got his life ruined. Why didn't Aya go after the friend?
Right.
Because of the what I got from it was Sawyer shared it with his buddy. I don't know if he texted it to him or if they just like over his shoulder and say, "Hey, check this out." I guess he texted it to him because he got the picture. Um, but no mention of the friend. It would have
Mhm.
been interesting if they had been in the car together
Right.
when it went off there, when it went into the tree or something like that, and Aya just, like, interrupts their conversation or something, I don't know. But, yeah, just wasted potential all over the place. But I'm with you. I think this movie deserves, a second pass or maybe a third rewrite, to come up with something that's palatable and, dare I say, really smart. Because the first hour, I would recommend to people,
Mhm.
but then in that last 20 minutes, like, once Keith Carradine exits and goes out for a drink, I recommend you do the same, kids,
Yeah, just
because the
leave it
movie's
there.
over.
Just
Yeah,
leave
the
it
credits
sit
haven't
there.
rolled, but it's over, yeah. But, all right, I think it's good to leave that here.
Mhm.
But we do have a couple more comments from David. I don't know if he's left or if he's still hanging out, but we'll go through the comments anyway. The plot of this movie about a household being taken by artificial intelligence makes me think of the 1970s thriller The Demon Seed,
It's a
which
good movie.
I haven't seen it. I've heard of it, but I didn't know it was about AI. I heard the title. I thought, oh, it's about monsters. Um, and David says one of the classic movies that deals with the whole AI is the original 1984 from the 50s. AI, really? Was the idea that Big Brother was a robot or something? Or
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long
interesting.
time since I visited in 1984, but yeah. Uh,
The 1984 from the 80s was really good. Criterion put that out a few years
yeah,
ago,
I've got
and
the vinyl soundtrack on record. Of course I do, but no.
nice.
not-
Well, I'm surprised, Mark.
I know.
But no, so thank you, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of the Spoiler Room and Special Mark Productions. I think, hope, demand to see you back here next week, this time, because we're going to be talking about a movie that I'm hearing decent things about. That, maybe that was not written by AI. Maybe it's a legacy sequel that we've been waiting for, the one that truly lives up to the honor of the original property, which is Beetlejuice. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go back this weekend and watch the original because I don't think I've sat through it from start to finish since probably 1990
Wow.
when it came out on home video. Yeah. My relationship with Beetlejuice is very complicated. I like the idea of it, but I wasn't so keen on the film. We'll see if 47-year-old me has a different reaction than 12-year-old me.
That'll be interesting.
Man. Yes, and then I'll
Mm.
check out the sequel. So, are you how on a scale of day to day-o, how excited are you, Mark, for Beetlejuice 2?
I am cautiously optimistic. I mean, the excitement that's been coming out of some of the reviews, just the high level reviews that I'm looking, because I usually don't read into them until I see the film. I'm interested in. You know, it looks like they didn't try to go too complicated like they do with some legacy sequels, so we'll have to see. You know, and for me, I'm cautiously optimistic. We had been teased for so long that there was going to be a Beetlejuice sequel. I mean, decades. This is another movie this year, like many of them, like The Crow. You know, where you've been teased for decades. This is going to come out, and it never does. So now that it's finally here, I'm cautiously optimistic. From the screenshots and everything that I saw and the casting, at least, gives me hope that I'm going to enjoy it. Because I do love the pretty much the entire cast that they have gotten for it. So, you know,
I'm with you. I'm more skeptical than cautiously optimistic because
mm,
I've been burned so many times. I look at the trailer and I'm like, Jenna Ortega looks like I know she's Winona Ryder's character's daughter, but it just looks like she's playing Winona Ryder's daughter or the character from the
sure.
first movie in what is essentially a remake, but with better special effects. Just call it Beetlejuice again. I'm hoping there's a reason that everyone wanted to come back and revisit this instead of just, hey, we can sell crazy popcorn buckets and give Hot Topic a boost.
Well,
So
some of
we'll
the
see.
behind the scenes stuff that I've seen bits and pieces of gives me hope as well. Especially with Michael Keaton and their handling of the main character. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, we'll find out a week from
we
tonight.
will.
In
We
fact,
will.
we will know the answer because we'll be wrapping up as we are today, right now. So, yeah, again, thanks, Mark, for hanging out, for paying twice, and for paying a third time by having to relive the trauma of
Oh,
AI or Afraid.
it's,
I always
it's
enjoy hanging out and talking movies with you, man.
Same here, same here. And you know, it's one of those things where I will not rip on a film at all until I actually go see it. So you know, and my oldest son is similar. He's like, as much as he says, well, that trailer really makes it look like trash, but I won't say for sure until I see the movie. And you
Mm.
know, I don't mind paying a movie. That's the risk and the excitement you get from going to the films. You pay your admission wondering, is this going to be entertaining? Or is this going to be something that I need to drink afterwards heavily? And, you know,
And with my luck lately, Mark, I find out the answer within about 10 minutes of the opening, and then I'm stuck because I'm not a walkouter.
I'm not
But
either.
anyway, well, oh man. But okay, Mark, thanks a lot. Take care. Everybody out there, thanks for tuning in, either catching this live or on the replay. If you like this content, please, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And be sure and check out Mark's info down below, along with the rest of Earth's Mightiest critics who did not see this movie. I don't blame them, but we're here talking about it because this is high art. Mark, what are the two movies that you're getting ready to review? You mentioned before the show started. Share that with the audience.
I okay. Psych, Psycho Sex Dolls and a Cyber Babe versus no, it's Babezilla, excuse me, Babezilla versus the Cyber Skanks, the Rise of Mecha Babezilla is one of, and then the other one is Psycho Sex Dolls. Those are the quality of films that I review over on my channel. So
And you know what you did, Mark? You inspired the audience to make their own triple feature. But anyway, thanks everybody. Good night, and yeah, stay away from AI. It's creepy or
creepy.
something. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.